So, hello everybody. This is future me talking to you to inform you of some important things. The video that you're about to see, I do make some kind of minor mistakes, but to me they're significant enough that I will draw some attention to them. I suggested that would be the resistor that you should measure B plus at. It's actually that resistor. It's just like a K7000. And there was a little, well, it was a little cap over here. I forgot to replace it. But I'm going to leave all of these mistakes intact. I don't like jump cuts and stuff like that. I'm going to leave all the mistakes intact because the reason why I do these videos is to, help with some of the more common mistakes that people make when servicing monitors, right? And I'm pointing out that, like, okay, I personally goof this up, like screwing the flyback back in, but not soldering it. I've done that enough times. So that's the reason why I do these videos. But while I'm here, there is something I want to point out, because there was a gentleman that had an issue with his horizontal hold. He couldn't get it to adjust out. You see that chip right there? That HA11423. These boards are actually like very labeled very, very nicely. Yeah, I told him that's the vertical horizontal oscillator. That's probably what those lines are, this little box thing. And that's the power side. It says it right there, power AVR. Interface, that's where all the RGB goes through, because there's the RGB plug. Like I said in the video, alright, this isn't intended to be a repair video, but since I'm here, there are instances where you will have these where, like, colors will not get to the neck board. And it's not going to be this. I have one of them that I was not able to fix. But then I have one that I was able to fix. And the way how I did it was I just took these all out, all these transistors, and I rotated them around. So the way how I rotate is we do the outer two, and then another two. And then they are all in unique positions, and then I soldered them in, and then all the colors worked. Alright, so that's it. I just thought I'd throw some notes in here, because, like my lesson plan, it's completely improvised. And I'm just throwing this out there because I forgot a few things. Oh, one more thing. When you go to put this back in, this little ring might fight you a little bit trying to get this back in. This anode wire, you can pull these out a little bit more, and then when you plug it in, you pull back on this, and that'll tighten it up. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it when I put this chassis back in the game, but I would like to show how I reinsert these without damaging that jumper right there. But if you could imagine for a moment, alright, like, here we'll line it up with this blue tape, alright? Instead of lining this hole with the hole in the tray, bias it a little bit to the left. The tape is fighting me. It's fighting me a little bit. But bias it to the left, and then put this in. Alright, so here's your U-shaped nylon thingy, your board support here, and then slide it over when this is under. And it shouldn't damage that at all. Okay? Now, hope that was educational. If you make popcorn, make some popcorn. Enjoy the show. Okay, hello and welcome back everybody. Today I have a Wells Gardner K4900 that has a little bit of a backstory, but I'm not going to tell that right now. I figure we'll save that for another day. What I was able to deduce last week is that it really just needs like my standard monitor service, and I'm just trying to get things in order here. Let's do the tool breakdown first and foremost. You can't see it, but I have my Weller digital soldering station over here. My Hakko FR301 for desoldering needs, and you're going to want all your stuff for cleaning it out periodically. I have my Craftsman nut Dremel with a sanding bit. You will see why momentarily. And then I have my Crescent snips and pliers. These are sold in a set. These pliers actually have a lot of utility purpose to them. Then I have my sacred Craftsman Phillips screwdriver. I've probably used this on like 50,000 missions. And then I have a roll of blue tape. That's what holds all of these caps, which, I don't know. I suppose I can give up the secret. Yeah, it's from Arcade Parts and Repair. Hang on to the bag. You might need it for something. And here's the sheet. That comes in handy. So, I'm looking at the notes on here. And one thing that it doesn't mention is that I believe it's this cap here. This 100 microfarad, 160 volt cap. There are different models of the K4900. They mostly are defined by the amount of adjustment pots on this edge over here. So this one, they call it a 5-pot model, but there's a 3-pot, which probably doesn't have the vertical dampener, which I believe that's vertical linearity. And this one is one of the very later model ones. It has a vertical position pot instead of the post gimmick, which is that thing. This one has the horizontal position biased to the right position, so the monitor in the game looked okay, so I'm just going to leave that alone. But the point that I was getting at is this one, the vertical deflection transistors are on fairly large heat sinks. The older model, the heat sinks are way smaller, and this cap is a 47 microfarad 160 volt cap, and there are not multiple cap kits for these. So one day, I used to put 47 microfarad caps in until one day I was like, I wonder what happens if I put the 100 microfarad cap that comes in the kit. And it worked fine. Alright? But the other point of emphasis that I'm trying to get at is depending if you have the small heat sinks or the large heat sinks, determines which yoke is compatible with this deflection board. So if you have one of these where I believe the geometry at the top, like I think it has like a fold over or something that you can't adjust out, that means you have the wrong yoke. There's really not a whole lot you can do about that except, I don't know, get the right deflection board. And I don't know the model numbers. They do, the old ones do have a specific model number, but I don't remember it offhand. All right. So, given that this is a Wells Gardner monitor, there are some resistors that need to be cleaned up. and I don't think it's going to come up very well in the focus, but these solder pads on these are kind of not horrible, but they do need some reworking. My Hako hasn't been turned on in a while. It's like making sounds at me. But anyway, the first thing I do is I remove the flyback. So, very gently flip this over, and I'm going to add solder if I can find it. Let me look in my bag here. I haven't done this in a while, so forgive me. But also, I've forgotten the tool breakdown. This Hako brass ball is very good. It's very useful. So what I'm going to do first is add solder to these flyback pins. And for this, you don't have to do it fancy. You're just adding solder. And another point of emphasis, I believe, I don't know what nozzle I have here. This is not the big nozzle. Listen to this thing. Can I get around these? No, you gotta put the solder cup in right. Or the nozzle's clogged. Let me see here. Should have had a large nozzle. Is this the large nozzle? Oh, maybe. Let's switch these. Maybe this is... Poor guy is like rusting from disuse. Let's try this again. Let that heat up. Is it gonna work now? Not really. What's happening here? See, that goes through. Let's see. Okay. I've barely used this thing. It was cleaned. You can see the cup is like, you can see through it. Let's see here. There we go. Is it gonna work now? There it is. Sometimes you just gotta throw some solder on the nozzle. That's a good idea for a video. I need to show how to clean and maintain these things. They're very useful, very effective, but it's one of those things where you kind of get what you pay for. Okay. Sorry for the delay. All right. Now, There are 3 screws that you have to take out. There's going to be this one for this ground wire, because that goes to the neck board, and there are 2 screws on the top holding the fly back in. So let's get these out. Set them in a safe place, like on top of my power supply here. Take this ground wire out. I'm actually going to put that screw back in. And then there's the RGB plug over here. Unplug that, and there's the fly back. And yes, there's this plug right here as well. Came out pretty swimmingly, and there's a zip tie. And this, whoops, should just come out. All right. I'll set that aside. And that looks like mouse dew. It's not cool. All right. Normally I would wash this, but this chassis is actually pretty clean. So I'm going to assume this game sat for a while. All right, so the first resistor I'm going to take out is this R355. I'm going to yoink this by hand. Okay, so there's that. And then R363. Also going to yoink this out by hand. Okay, there's that. And then there is R313, which, if I'm not mistaken, is cited in the flowchart, the Randy Fromm flowchart. If you have issues with vertical deflection, so you're just gonna have to pretend that my hands are vertical deflection. If you have a thing where it like goes partial vertical collapse, or it does like a bouncy thing, or you smack the side of it and it goes like that and like that, it's probably gonna be one of these resistors. That is the problem. R3, I've never analyzed the schematics for these, because for the most part, these don't really break. Though I did have one time where I did what I'm doing right now, and when I put it back in the game, it didn't work anymore. And I'm going to show you how to alleviate that mayhem. I'm just clearing the holes out now. Okay. Now, I'm going to choose this ceramic resistor first. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like little teeth on here. They're like anchor teeth. I'm just going to flatten these out, because I'm going to use the sanding bit on here, and if you don't flatten these out, they will destroy the bit. All right, and there's some solder on here still, so I need to remove that. And then I use this. I just sand the legs. These are actually like pretty good condition as is, but for the sake of posterity, I'm going to clean them up anyway. Okay. And I'm going to flatten these out a little bit. I'm going to sand these. Now I generally do this. You'll see it more on like heavily used monitors. The legs will have like a black char on them. And the significance of the black char is that when you go to resolder those legs, the solder just kind of like blobs up around the pin. You don't get a very solid solder connection out of it. Which kind of defeats the whole purpose of what you're trying to do. Alright. Now, this resistor, like, one leg is going to come out the bottom. That's the very middle leg. And it does have some char on it. And then the other leg just kind of, like, folds around and solders to this mounting bracket. And I'm going to want to resolder that. And might be easier to do it here instead of soldered into the board. Let's see what we got. I mean, do I want to remove the solder? Let's see. Just start over, right? Okay, theoretically, that will improve the connection of the resistor to the bracket. Now, the only points that you really need to solder are going to be the front middle one. This is hot, by the way. And this middle leg in the center. I just kind of go around the middle leg in a circular motion. And then that pin, I go like that. This is hot, by the way. And like that. We're not done. Now I use this to expand these solder pads here. And you have to do this very delicately, by the way, because you can eat away at the actual trace, not the mask. All right? So I'm just kind of like dabbing against this. This particular bit is not good for this. It's a little too abrasive. It's kind of eating stuff up a little bit. Now, let's put these back in. So we're going to do R363 first. And what I'm going to do, because it's going to require a lot of heat to flow this through, I'm just going to tack this in place like that. So I can take my fingers off it and it's not going to move. And then I solder the opposite side. And when you solder, go in like a circular motion. Okay, so the reason why I sanded the mask off is to make the solder pads bigger. So you have a way more solid connection. Alright. So there's that. It smells delightful. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm just going to tack it in place, hold it for a second, because if you let go too soon, it will just fall out. And these two anchors over here are just isolated solder pads. If you apply too much heat to them, you will burn the pads off. And it's not the end of the universe, it just won't be very aesthetically pleasing. Okay. And R355. Okay, and this, the legs get a little fatter, so you should not be able to push it in like 2 inches. Barely tack that. Let's do the other side. Yeah, the sanding bit's too pointy. Alright, so that's the solder cleanup on the resistors, and this thing, I'm just going to use this twist tie gimmick to hold it. If I can get in there. There we go. Now, there are other areas that you need to resolder, and that's going to be the yoke header pins right here, the signal header pins right here, the RGB pins right here, which I recommend doing those with that plug plugged in. So we'll do that when we get to the neckboard part. And then there's the D-gauze header pins. And then, one time, I had a dead K4900, and it wound up being, okay, so that's your voltage regulator on that side, and that's the horizontal output transistor on that side. And you can see that they have sockets. The solder to those sockets is an area that should be cleaned up. Trying to figure out where these pins are. Okay, so these three are going to be the voltage regulator ones. And for these, I'm going to add solder. And remove the solder. This smells like a charcoal grill. So let me see. I see daylight between all those holes there, so that's good. And now I'm just going to resolder these. Okay, there's the voltage regulator. Now let's do the hot on this side. It's going to be these three pins here. Just analyzing this closer, you're not going to see it. There is a potentiality that maybe one day, like 20 years from now, that solder would break down. Here, let's shoot the cleaning pin through here. Okay. And there are those. Now, here's where it gets real fun. So I had one of these years ago. It was in a Tron cabinet where I did all the things that I do, and I put the monitor back in the game, and I had no power. Like this thing would not turn on at all. And the reason, if you look along the edge here, there's one. Can you see that around the filter cap? There's two. And there's three of these little paperclip looking jumpers. And when you mount this back in the tray, like if you go straight where you mount these holes with the L bracket parts of the tray, if you go straight in, there's like a little nylon gimmick in the front. It's like U-shaped. That kind of holds the board in place so that you can't flex it and arc it to the tray. And this jumper here, if you just go straight in, it like really stresses that jumper. And I'm looking at the solder on this. I don't know if it's going to come up, but I can already see a halo starting to form on it. And these jumpers are for the B+. That connects the power supply side with the deflection side. And if any of these jumpers break, you will wind up with a dead monitor. And I learned that the hard way one day, and then I started doing these correctly from that point forward. Okay, so for these I'm just going to add new solder. That should be plenty sufficient. Alright, so let's do the yoke header pins. What I'm going to do is add solder to all 4 pins, and I'm going to try to just add enough. If you see, I'm kind of directing traffic with my hand with the solder here to get the solder to melt all the way around. Now, word to the wise, alright, when you go to desolder these, do not cup it around the pin from the top. Don't do that, because then you'll push them out. So what I'm going to do is just kind of approach it from the side and just give it a little ding like that. Okay? You just hold it long enough to where you see the solder melt, and you just give it a little ding. Alright? And I'm not doing all 4 of them at once because I don't want the thing to fall out. Okay? So if you do it this way, keep track of which one you don't desolder. And then I'm just going to direct traffic, give it a little circle, and over the top. You gotta do this very gently. You don't want to put any pressure on the pins when you do it. Okay? Then we do the last pin. Then we do the same thing. We add some solder and kind of sweep over the top. And then we look at it, and they didn't move at all. So that's what we wanted. Alright? So now let's do the signal header. The signal header is the one that gets a lot of abuse. Especially if you have a signal plug that has like the little triangle friction locks. And you have to like really fight it to get it out. With this factory solder, when you like jiggle it back and forth, it's going to like really stress. Usually it's the red pin that takes the most abuse. And maybe the negative horizontal sync, because that's on the opposite side, right? Maybe. Okay. So for these, I'm just going to add solder. I'm not going to remove the old stuff. And you have to be careful here. You don't want to bridge these together. So I'm like getting really centered up on the pin. I'm going in a circular motion. flow the solder as best as I can here. And that is the signal header. Alright, and like I said, I'll do the RGB header when I get around to putting this back together and I get the flyback and neck board back in the mix. Now, another thing that I'm going to do is the width coil. And do the width coil. And this, I think, I don't know, is adding solder good enough? No, I think I'm gonna remove the old solder. And this one, you might want to hit the pins from the side because they're all bent and squiggly. You're probably not going to get the iron around it. You don't want to apply too much heat for too long. You don't want to burn the solder pads off. So I did the middle 3 pins first. And oh, does that look good? This might be a thing where using the knot Dremel with a wire brush might be beneficial, but no, this should be fine. Alright. Okay. Yeah, that passes the eye test. Now that we have done all the solder cleanup, well, most of it, we still got to do that. Now we can move on to replacing caps. Alright, so I usually start this section right here. So we'll do that. And I haven't done one of these in a very long time. These heat sinks are kind of in the way. So like I said, these pliers, they got a utility purpose to them. This is 100 or 10 microfarad 100 volt. I just bumped the camera. Oh, yep, I haven't done this in a while. And I bumped the camera again. Okay. That's this, right? No. I don't know what I'm doing, people. Or is it these? It's these. I'm out of practice. What can I say? I don't like these things. Helpful pro tip. Make note of the polarity of the cap that you took out. So in this case, what are these? So these are marked for minus side. Some of the really old stuff is marked for plus side. This board has little plus signs on it. So the stripe side goes on the opposite end. Like I always do, I tack a side in, do the other side, wait a second, and do that side. Alright. Now, word to the wise, these legs that I just cut off, if you could, it'd be beneficial to keep those in a cup, because if you ever need a 0 ohm something or another, that'd be very beneficial. Alright, so this next one I think is a 2.2. This has like a, I don't know what that is, a diode cap, whatever it is. I'm just going to melt this and pull this back. Desolder these. Except I need to get on it. There we go. Now that jumper, make note of that too. Alright, that connects to the plus side of the cap. That's a 2.250. Which these should be on one of... No, these are hanging loose. Those are 22s. You know, I don't like this roll. It's too deep. So go with the shallow one instead and make a mess. Because of course. Alright. But that is the cap that I was looking for. Alright. It's not easy to see because of these heat sinks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tack the minus side because I have to reconnect this jumper. Add solder there. I'm going to push down on this jumper like so. And give it a second to solidify. And do the other side. Make sure you don't cut that. You don't want to do that. All right. C311. There's a 4.7250 cap, which is that one. It's a pretty big difference there, huh? Okay. You'll notice also I don't do those 90-degree bends on my caps. I don't do that. You just keep a finger on the other side and hold it in. Okay. And I think this is 1000. This is C507. So I stand corrected. This board is marked for minus and plus sides. Oh, you idiot. That's a 47, which is this cap right here. That's 1000. My mistake. Like I said, I'm out of practice here. The place that I work placed a very strong emphasis on recapping all the monitors. By the way, the holes, the spacings, probably can't tell here, the spacings are a little different. I will show you how I deal with that. So I take the minus side, bend the legs straight out like that, and then you take your handy utility pliers and you make a 90-degree bend out of that. And then it will just plug right in. Okay. Alright, C701. Also, I'm kind of jiggling the cap on the other side. Which helps in desoldering it out. Which one are you? This one. Yep. I believe. Yep, that's another one I gotta bend. Like so. We are almost out of this treacherous corner of the board. And this becomes a lot more fun. Can't believe that's stuck. All right. Whoa. And look at that. All right. So let's do this big 100 microfarad cap. This is C313. Like I said, if you have an older K4900, this will be another 47 microfarad 160 volt cap. These holes should just line up. Yep. You can totally replace it with this higher capacitance cap, so it's probably just a filter cap. It's not gonna hurt anything at all. These are thicker legs, so you're gonna go a little deeper with the snips. There we go. All right. That's a 330. 330, 330. Where'd you go? There you are. Also, if you have an earlier revision K4900, there are other little subtle cap differences. They're all noted on the sheet. But I'm surprised that 100 microfarad cap that I just changed isn't notated anywhere on there. I'm guessing people never say anything about it. They just replace it. What is this? 1 microfarad? 2.2. 2.2. Alright, C303. So this one's got the legs bent out a little bit. But if you give it a little jiggle on the other side, it will clear out. Okay. Where is... Also, another helpful pro tip, don't mix your 22s and 2.2s. That might be bad. I see what they did here. Okay. I think C366. Yep. Says it's not populated in every version of the chassis. They have like a diode or a glass cap something there. I never noticed that before. So it's not the case on this model. Well, maybe it is. But if a capacitor is not installed in the board, you do not install one in that place. Especially with Wells Gardner stuff. They did a lot of modifications to their designs over time, as is evident by what I've told you about these. Okay. There's another 1000 cap here. So let's do that one. Now I am kind of in a mode where I'm just replacing these one by one. How's my video looking so far? I hope you can see everything I'm doing, because I can't see it. As you can see, I made a little blue tape box so I don't go out of frame. Alright. Let's do this little bugger. This is C315. This is a 1 microfarad cap. Where are we at? Where are we at? Right there. Yeah, I'm just kind of moving the cap back and forth. Saw something that looked a little suspicious. Oh, maybe I'm making it up. Alright. So these 3 caps come on a strip. And they're going to go outside of the circle here. Okay, there's a bunch of wires in the way. All right. This is kind of like the end boss battle. This is a capacitor installed on top of a diode. And it's actually cited on the sheet as D306, because it's not really a cap location. And the way how I deal with these, all right, so you got 2 separate legs going through each hole. So desoldering straight is not going to be very effective. The way how I take these out is I add solder to the 2 points. All right, so the diode is the one that's like folded. But what I do is I add solder to these, and I'm going to melt this one and pull up, and then melt the other one. And you just keep alternating back and forth until the cap comes out. All right. Now, you can go back over these and desolder them. And I'm just hitting them from the side. I'm not trying to grab around the diode legs or anything silly like that. Now to form this cap, to fit over this diode, what I do is I fold the legs flat, like so. And you just kind of put this over the top and do some 90-degree bends accordingly. Doesn't really need to be fancy, but the way how this cap goes in is the minus side faces the striped, the banded cathode side of the diode, which is marked underneath. And you just kind of feed this in, and now you can solder it in place. Which I'm just going to tack that to the other side. Wait a second, and then go back to the first side. And that is how you install D306. Or at least the cap that goes on top of D306. Alright? So, I believe that's a 470. What's your name? C205. Yep, 470. I'm just doing this one because it's buried under a bunch of stuff. Alright, tack one end. Alright. And I used to clean these resistors too. I might just do that. This is a big 22 microfarad cap here. The solder looks kind of caca. So this is this big cap right here. It's very similar to the K7000 actually. Alright. Yeah, I think I'm just going to add some solder to these resistors or clean them somehow. Alright. We forgot the degauss header, so let's do that real quick. See how I did that in a circle and I just swooped over the top. Also, you want to pause for a second and let that one solidify first, or else you wind up dropping it out, and that's not good. Made that mistake 100 times. Alright, let's do these resistors real quick. I mean, this looks okay, but I'm just going to add solder here. Once again, I've never analyzed the schematics to these. But I'm going to assume this big one right here comes off of the voltage regulator, so that's significant. That might be where you measure B+, actually, now that I think about it. Alright, we got a few little caps. These little buggers match C352 and 354. What are these? The 22? Nope, those are 47s. I don't know what I'm doing. Don't mind me. Alright, these go there. If you know anything about me, I do not like these little pre-bends, so I always straighten them out, like so. I like mounting the caps as close to the board as I can get. By the way, this is significantly easier without the flyback installed to handle. And this time I have to hold two caps in place with one finger. First cap didn't go. There we go. Let's go back to the second one. Yep. Okay. We're in the home stretch. Okay, and then we got one little one there. And I think there's going to be one left over. That's the C366. That is, yeah, that's that 22 microfarad cap. That one's not used. So here's C351. And, yep, that is a 1 microfarad cap. We're missing a cap. There it is. A little bit of paper on there still. Solder didn't want to flow. All right. So did I get everything? It looks like I got everything. Yes, one of these caps, C308, is a 3.3 microfarad cap on the older model. So that is what I have left over, and I believe this goes to the neck board, right? Yep. So all of the caps that I have left. All right. So now we get to put the flyback back in. Okay. There's my screws. Now, this is rookie mistake moment, all right? And I have been guilty of doing this many times. But of all the problems that you can have, this is probably one of the most positive ones. There have been many times that I screw these flybacks in and I forget to solder them. And as you could probably surmise, that's a problem. Actually, we're missing a cap. Which one did I forget? Which one am I missing? C701. C701. Dude. Dude. Okay. So I have to get rid of this cardboard cover on the neck board. But this is one instance, because this is going in a cocktail game, where I will be reinstalling it. Okay. Solar 400s. Where's this cap? Where is this thing? This one right here. How did we forget him? You dum-dum. Alright. My mistake. Some exposed solder mask there. That's unusual. I didn't do that. This tiny little caps. What was the rating on this? 100 volts. Okay. My mistake. It's because I was expecting an equivalent sized cap to be there. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. All right, you see that flyback, that unsoldered flyback. Can't forget about him. But yes, what winds up happening if you don't solder the flyback, you put the thing back in the game, and it's really bad if it's a Pac-Man and you got to put the monitor in like sideways. And then you find out after the fact that, oops, forgot to solder the flyback. Alright, so let's do that real quick before we forget. If you see how I'm doing this, I'm just dragging the iron front and back, and I just feed the solder to it. Those are really solid solder connections here. Except that one. I don't know what happened there. I have wire brushed flyback pins in the past, but not today. No wire brush today. All right. Now, we plug the RGB back in. I'm going to add solder, remove it, and replace it. The reason why I put the plug in so that the pins don't stagger and they're not uneven. I'm doing pins 1, 2, and 4. I'll lay down new solder. And these I'm fanning upward. These I'm going like literally up and down on the pins to flow them through. Okay. And we do pin 3. Solder pin 3. Okay. Now, since it's right next to it, the filter cap. There are a lot of people that are replacing filter caps in contemporary times, and I don't know if it is because they're using component testers and they're seeing that like the microfarad rating is a little lower than it's supposed to be, or they just like buying filter caps and spending money. I don't know, but filter caps by nature, the microfarads that you will observe will be lower than what they are rated at, because that's not what they're for. They're not for that. They are just there to basically block out AC voltage. If your filter cap were bad, you would know it. The picture would be really dark and probably super small and just look very nasty. So if you want to save some money, don't replace the filter cap, all right? So now I'm doing this little interconnect plug on the side of the neck board, and these I'm just adding solder. These are prone to the traces lifting, so I wasn't on there very long. All right. Now another thing that I do on these, because way back in the day, the very first K4900 that I ever worked on was missing blue. And I'm going crazy. I'm like resoldering the signal header. I'm like swapping the color transistors and all this nonsense, right? It wound up being the solder to the neck socket. So you see that KB pin right there? That's the blue pin. So we're going to resolder all of those, and that one is the focus pin. All right, so we're going to do that too. And I'm just going to remelt all this solder. And that should just be enough. Like, you shouldn't have to replace the solder unless you really want to. Okay, this heater pin, I'm just kind of blobbing the iron all over them. And then there is KB. Alright, so there's that. Now, we got 2 ground wires here. You see that? This one connects to the deflection board, to the heatsink wall, and this one is the one that connects to the ground wire coming off of the braid. They call it the DAG wire coming off of the tube. These solder connections right here need to be redone. Okay. As a matter of fact, give me 1 second. Here's my wire strippers. is add solder here. And these wires, they just kind of wrap around. All right, so this one is disconnected. It's just kind of flopping around. I'm going to cut right there. And there's the little loopy thingy. And then I'm going to do the same thing to this wire. Now, in all fairness, these ground wires aren't terrible. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this glop off. Alright, so there's that wire. And then I'm just going to brush these wire strands off. And that's hot. So I'm not going to handle that. And then this ground pad, I'm just going to clean it up. So it is a shiny silver pad. Alright, and this little chunk of wire here, I'm just going to cut this off. Now I said that these were good, right? There is an instance, all right, so you got to take into consideration these monitors way back in the day in the coin-op era, you know, like if your high earning game, like the monitor crapped out on your high earning game, you're going to steal a monitor from a lesser earning game to put in it, right? Usually you would sub chassis and whatever, but just the handling of this and whatever, these will fray and break off eventually. I've seen these like hanging on by like a strand or two in the past, and that's not good. All right. So I'm just going to strip this accordingly. And then this. I'll take these, I'm going to feed them in this hole and fold them over on this silver pad, like so. This is going to be a dangerous stunt here. But it's for a good cause. I just got these kind of tacked in place. And I'm going to go heavy with this solder in this corner here. You just melt it all the way through. And burn your fingers a little bit holding it in place. But now you have fresh ground connection. All right. So now I can screw this eyelet back in here. So this is what provides the ground connection to the neckboard. Without it, the neckboard will have no working heater voltage. There will be no power to it, and you will be greeted to no neck glow in your tube. So if you take this out, or it breaks off, make sure you do what I just did. All right? And thus, I think this is an overhauled Wells Gardner K4900. This is tangled up. I'm having a OCD meltdown here. Let's untangle this. Put this back together like so. And there it is. I just have to zip tie that back on and we are good. I think that's pretty cool. So, I hope this video was educational, as always. And I guess I will have to see you next time with another project. Put my solder tools to bed. And chances are we're going to do a video of reinstalling this in the game, and we'll see what happens. That's it. That's all I got for now. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, and there will be more adventures to come later on.